You are listening to the Good Girl Podcast. My name is Cameo King. I'm the host of the Good Girl Podcast. There wasn't a space for women to be themselves in every facet of their lives. The Good Girl Podcast was created to offer that space, to have conversations with a gutted truth without restriction. Join us to unpack your own set of questions and confessions every week in this good and safe space. Hey, y'all. So this is a special episode. I went live this past weekend. I don't think I've done a live podcast in a while. I think the last time I did one, y'all remember the one from way back when? It was like 3 single men and 3 single, maybe it's time to drum that one back up. But it was 3 single men and 3 single women, and we had that conversation. So y'all can look through the archives for that. But anyway, I did a live podcast, and so I'm gonna replay it for you guys. I think we definitely shared some great gems, and I talk about this in the podcast, but the importance of who you are, like your core, your integrity, all that shows up in your business, your mental health, your wellness, how you approach life, all that shows up in your business. I think we believe far too often I can do good business and not be a good version of me, right? Well, what does Lauren Hill say? How you gonna win when you ain't right with them? And so we focus on 3 areas that I think are going to be beneficial to you all who want to be successful. I know we're talking about business owners, but I think this is in any area of your life. You definitely will get some nuggets. So listen up. Here we go. And real quick, we will be back next week with confessions. These are my confessions. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna go see Usher. But anyway, listen to this live podcast. But what's so special about today? Why are you going live today, Cameo? So I'm from Detroit. I live in Lansing, but right now I am in Grand Rapids. So shout out to Grand Rapids. Whoop, whoop. And specifically, I am at the Expo for the National Professional Men's Network, as well as the National Professional Women's Network. So excited to be here to do this live podcast. So shout out to y'all. I know you guys are in another room. I know you guys are listening, but I'm excited to be here. I'm so glad that I could continue this relationship with you all and continue the work I do. It's always great to find partners across the state and across the nation who value your work, and you can really walk step in step and help to purpose and move either person's mission forward. So I'm appreciative of the space and appreciative of the mission. And so let's hop into this podcast. And so I love conversations about soul work and how that very much connects to business, how that very much connects to what we do. Because I think a lot of times we separate business and who we are. And so I want to bring them together, and so we can have a good conversation with that. So excited to bring in not only my friend and my soror, but she hopped in the car from Lansing with me, Tanesha Shakoor. Hey, girl, hey. And she has supported me in a lot of different spaces, has been a friend to me, and very much we've had some conversations, and you've even been on the podcast as well. Yes. So tell the people who you are, girl.
I am Tanesha Shakoor. I am originally from North Carolina. I know y'all heard that little Southern accent. I moved here. Well, I moved to Michigan in 2013, I think it was, for law school. So I am the CEO and founder of Voices of Color, which is a domestic violence nonprofit. I am so grateful to be here with Cameo King. Again, as she said, my soror. I just love her and adore her. And you guys do not know what you're in for. When she talks about confessions, we dive into some really deep conversations, and we keep it very truthful and transparent. So thank you, Cameo.
Excited to have you. And so I hope today isn't going to be any different. And if you're watching, feel free to share, right? Because again, I want to reiterate this. Oftentimes we separate business from who we are, from some of the soul work, from some of the spirit work, but very much who we are permeates, if not drives, the success or oftentimes the failure in some of our businesses and what we're doing. And so our topic for the day, drum roll, it is no one is showing up for you. That's a hard truth, right? No one, not nary. That's what my grandma say, not nary. No one is showing up for you. So when you hear that phrase, Tanesha, what do you think when you hear that phrase?
I essentially for me, I know we've had these conversations so many times, but at the end of the day, you are the only person that's showing up for yourself. You are the only one that has the vision, is purpose to do what you're doing, and that doesn't mean in that capacity that people don't support you, that people don't physically show up to whatever events you're having or supporting you in some sort of aspect. But I think at the end of the day, when you're talking about no one is showing up for you, is because you solely have to be reliant and dependent upon yourself to make sure that your vision and your purpose is fulfilled.
I think I couldn't have said it better. And I think sometimes that phrase may hit us in a certain way because there's an expectation that we have that our friends, that our family, that even our community, that people who love us and people who care for us should show up for us. They should be there for us, especially in the ways that we want them to be there for us. But that isn't the case. And I want to say that, meaning that doesn't take away from who they are in our life, right? Because my mom maybe can't be at my event, or because maybe she can't sponsor, or maybe because she can't be the accountant, hint at my mama. But I know my mom isn't purposed to do that work, right? My mama got her own stuff that she wants to do. I'm called to do this. And I do believe that just because the people we desire to be there for us, that they aren't there for us, I believe there's always a ram in the bush. I believe that God, so I'm a woman of faith, and so I believe God will always provide. I had another, she was running a campaign. And one of the lessons she learned was that you be surprised who shows up for you. You're going to get your needs met, but you would be surprised who's really there for you. And again, not taking away from your friends who have been with you all along. That's just not their load to bear during that time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what we want to do too is we want to break it down. And also I want to, if you're watching, feel free to ask questions, right? So I can see questions, comments, all that other good stuff, whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you're watching on Facebook, on my personal page, or if you're watching on the Good Girl podcast page. Feel free to leave comments or questions, and we will do our best to address them and involve you in the conversation very much so. Because I think one of my sorors who's here, she asked me, about talking to a computer. I said, sometimes it's fun, you get real comfortable, but I really do like engaging people to see what you're thinking, to even like some of y'all be like, Cameo, you all the way off in what you're talking about.
Up for the challenge.
Yeah, definitely. And also just a quick shout out to Kareem with the NAACP, who set us up in this space. He was kind of aggressive with the mic, but he set us up in this. He set us up in this space, so I appreciate that. So the three things we want to address while we have your attention, while we're here, when it comes to no one is showing up for you, is one, the sacrificial woman, two, the lie of the grind culture, and three, the imaginary finish line, right? So those are all three areas I think that very much connect with our overall topic, that no one is showing up for you. Tanesha, is it one that, like, let's start here? And I'm looking this way because she's next to me and I'm trying to look. But anyone like that jumps out to you, like, let's start with this one.
Can you repeat all three?
She wasn't listening. Okay.
I was listening, but my heart is tugging.
Okay. So the sacrificial woman, the lie of the grind culture, and the imaginary finish line.
I don't know if I can just pick one, Cameo, because I think about the sacrificial woman and also think about the lie of the grind, because I feel like both of those have truly impacted my life as an entrepreneur and in the business world of operating. Do you want to dive into those?
So before we get into it, so we can give this conversation some context, right? And so, like, at least for me, so I run a nonprofit. I've been doing work for 10 years now. I built it from the ground up, and I'm not saying that out of arrogance. I did have the support of my community. It came out of another nonprofit, One Love Global, was very instrumental in its success. And so we've been able to garner partnerships across the state. with Michigan State University. We've been able to garner support with different folks, and it just a small, tiny organization, volunteer led, with a big impact. It's called Grit, Glam, and Guts. And then also this business, the Good Girl Podcast. My background is in journalism. And that's, for me, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And so a lot of people may not know what it takes to actually put on a podcast, and a successful podcast. So sometimes you think you're just sitting down, getting on a mic. No, it's preparing. What are we going to talk about? It's do you have sponsors for this podcast? Are you protected? It's so much behind the scenes. So when we talk about business and the success of business, and maybe how much you've been in debt to go to, it's just so that is the lens in which I'm seeing this, and putting on conferences and getting liability and working with kids. So for me, I understand the levels of it. When you got 300 kids in one space, I don't want nobody mama coming out. I don't want nobody mama coming after me because something happened. So you got to be together. And so I say all that to say, like, that is my lens in which I'm having when we talk about no one is showing up for you. When we talk about the sacrificial woman, when we talk about the lie of the grind culture, when we talk about this imaginary finish line. So understanding that there have been deadlines that we had to meet, that there was money that I had to raise, that there were lives on the line, there were relationships, there was being in partnerships with institutions. Mm-hmm. So I'm not talking out of my backside. So go ahead, Tanesha.
And in the context of everything that you're also talking about, I want to give context. I am one that also, I graduated from law school. I also became a full-time wife, a full-time mother of three at the same time as I became a wife while I was a full-time law student. And after law school, I started my nonprofit dealing with domestic violence. Also considering the fact when I talk about being the sacrificial woman is also because I also came from a place of where I had been in an abusive relationship where I was abused and raped, and then trying to transform that into now this successful, Black woman who's going to law school. And, we make up like 3% of attorneys. And so you have the pressure, you have the stressors that are upon you on top of knowing that this has been something you are purposed to do. And you are the only one with that vision because God has given it to you as a woman of faith. You understand the context. There's a difference between a career and a calling. And, Cameo, we have often talked about that. So a lot of times when we're expecting people to show up for us, we have to understand we were the one that were given the calling. And it is up to us to see that regardless of how people show up for us, regardless of when what they may provide, and also knowing that there's a season for people. Mm-hmm. And I think we expect people to take this journey with us, be on it for the long haul. And that is not what they're sometimes expected or what they're purposed to do. And we're not ready to release people as if they're ours in the first place. And so for someone who came out of law school and started the nonprofit, also who's still grinding at a 9-to-5 job as well, it is a lot. And I say the sacrificial part of that was probably me really, truly grasping a hold of my own mental health. And I think in our Black culture, we oftentimes negate our mental health or that space for ourselves to be able to grow, because until you also have that aspect of your life in check, I think it will, I don't want to say destroy the vision, but it can sidetrack you.
Yeah. So I think Tanesha did choose the first one, which is the sacrificial woman. And it's so funny. Your comments made me think about an event that I held. It was called the Sacrifice of Success. And we had 4 different women who represented different industries. Someone who was in a male-dominated industry in the the motivational speaking industry. She worked for one of the most popular motivational speakers. And then I had someone who was a local anchor out of Lansing. I had an elected official, and then I had someone who also built a global company from the ground up. And I think one of the questions, or the realities was they did sacrifice, right? But was the sacrifice worth it? Right. And so balancing, are we true? Like, we really have to answer that question. Like, are we truly called to this work? Because I think then that helps us define if it's worth it. but then understanding that there are costs, right?
Absolutely.
Because I think one was questioning, like, I missed out time, you know, with my family.
Can't get that back.
You can't, but then you have a successful career, right? And so I think sometimes we look for a silver bullet in terms of what is being sacrificed, but I don't think there is. Again, I'm a woman of faith. So for me, it's walking step in step with the Holy Spirit. Am I supposed to be doing this? Right.
And not looking to your left or your right to determine what that looks like. So when we start defining success and
yes,
when we compare, like, okay, well, this is another woman who has kids or someone who does not have any kids. And we're looking at our entrepreneur, like the path that we're taking, and we start saying, well, they're able to do this, they're able to do this. We don't know what people's lives consist of behind closed doors. And also, let's be real, the lies that show up through social media. We know every day what people put on social media, and they look happy, they look glorified, and they're having this amazing lifestyle. But what we don't see when it comes to, like, I'm sure, like, we can follow Good Girl podcast and we can listen to everything that you're doing, but we don't have the opportunity to see the grind that it takes. And this is obviously behind how did Cameo King get to this point? What does it take for her to stream live? All of these different things. And I think that is part of being an entrepreneur, is that sometimes we have to do better with being transparent and not always glorifying the end product of what we have accomplished, because it sells people this lie that entrepreneurship is the way to go, right? And it is the new way, the ideal of owning your own, not working for someone else. And it sounds great, but we're not telling people the behind the scenes, the work that it takes to put in. What do you have to do? What does it look like? And again, not looking to your left or your right to define it.
I think that was so crucial, right? I follow this woman. I think her name is Danielle Thomas. I think Thomas is her last name, but her brand is called like Unfit Christian. And she went on a kind of a rant about how very much this culture and people still buy into that is it golden or silver bullet? It's a bullet, whatever. I'm horrible with cliches. I don't know why I keep using them, and I'm horrible with them. But that we very much still crave this idea that it's like 3 steps to success, right? And we are very much a visual culture. So if she looks successful, right? If she has this lifestyle that I desire, whether it's going on vacation, whether it is an image of a family, whether it is, you know, all white everything, you know, we are more attracted to that than the actual work of the thing. And it's so hard to get out of that. And I think it's difficult for folks that are really like, I know people like to sell. I became successful in a year, but we were just having a conversation up here that most businesses are in the red their first 3 to 5 years. Right. But that's not the story we like. That's not the story we sell. Right. That we just broke even on year 3, you know? So I love that truth telling piece. And so again, and I want to encourage you all, if you're out there, hey Vincent, I don't know if he's still on, but he said, hey, if you are out there, feel free to drop your questions, feel free to drop your comments. Again, I can see them and I can respond to them. And if you can share, and again, if you're just now joining us, Tanesha and I, we're live in Grand Rapids at the National Professional Men's Network, the National Professional Women's Network. There's an expo going on. You guys should come out. It is a beautiful day. It is a beautiful day. So you should get out. You should come out. Expo, you know, it's food, businesses. You can buy stuff, support some businesses out here and learn a lot more about people and things that are contributing to the growth and to the welfare of this community. And so we're talking about No One is Showing Up for You. That's the title of what we're talking about. And we're really focusing on the areas in business. So we just talked about the sacrificial woman. And so we're going to go into the lie of the grind culture. And so that ate me alive, right? the lie of the grind, because I believed it, right? And I don't want to go too deep into it, but it's this idea that if I just work hard enough, if I just put in 1 more hour, if I just stay up for 12 hours, then I'm going to reach my goal, right? If I just,
and your grind is not going to look like my grind. and it depends on what lane we're in. The same thing, my nonprofit and your nonprofit, you working with young women and the Good Girl podcast, and what I'm doing over here with Deep, like our grinds are going to be very different. Um, and just because you're putting in 20 extra hours than I did this week, it does not mean that your results are going to be greater. And that is, again, that is that lie to think the more time we put in, but that's because we lived in a world to think that if we're physically moving, that we're being productive. Busy work does not equal like production. You can stay busy, you can go to all the meetings in the world, and when you by the end of the week you accomplished nothing. All you did was show up for a bunch of other people, and you were able to accomplish nothing for your own business.
Yeah.
And I found myself, when we talk about that grind, at one point that was me feeling like, okay, I probably should go to this meeting, I probably should go to that meeting, thinking this is going to do something for my business. And I really had to start thinking about and being strategic about what meetings I started attending, because I was not seeing any results. I'm showing up and it was doing nothing for me. And so when we talk about that balance, that is part of something that showing up in a room and in a space that does not benefit you, and having time where now everyone is using the concept of networking. Now people say, okay, we're not networking, we're collaborating. And sometimes we're doing neither. We're just being opportunists.
Yeah. And I think what I hear you saying is the intentionality behind what we are doing. Like, is this connected to your long-term goals? Mm-hmm. Why are you participating? Why are you connecting? Why are you showing up? Does this move the needle in the area that you should be successful in, or that you want to be successful in, right? And for me, when I got my revelation about the lie of the grind culture, is because I felt like if you just like, this is going to be the time, right, Cameo? When you post, this is the one that's going to take you over. Listen, so just go ahead and post it, even though you got a headache, even though you haven't eaten, even though you got something else to do. Just push. Do not rest, right? Because this is going to be the one. And what I found, what was behind this, again, this is my conviction, is that my push is that I was really trying to move the hand of God, right? I was really saying like, yep, this gonna be the one. That's like this. Forget God's time and Cameo about to make this happen, you know? And I don't think we even realize that's what we're doing, right? Yeah, just reframing that I think I'll say how I interpret it, right? I'm not saying everybody else interpreted it, but Cameo was not including God in the equation.
Right, because what God has for you is for you. So there is nothing more or less that you can possibly do to make what he already has for you happen in your timing. And that's when we get ahead of ourselves, thinking, if I just do that one more thing, if I stay up this extra hour, or I connect with this person, because we know things will come full circle. You may meet, being here today, you may meet someone and it's a great opportunity. You're connecting with someone and nothing happens this year at all between the two of you. 10 years from now, that's when something may happen between you and that person as far as your business is concerned. And that's because that's what the vision was for you too. We just didn't know what that looked like. And we weren't necessarily, and sometimes we don't need to know what it looks like because we would sabotage it.
Yeah. And I think too, I don't think, I'll say this, I don't want to discount, right, working hard, right? Because faith without works is dead. So you can't sit there and be like, oh, I'm waiting on God. No, that's not going to work either. That's not going to work either.
This is not the time to be late.
No. And let's be clear, I think that there could be a time when God is telling you, this is the season you need to work. This is the season maybe when you need to tighten up your schedule, because I am requiring more of you, right?
Yes.
Where you do need to get up at 6 a.m., 4 a.m. so you can have your quiet time with me, and then you can use 6 to 9 to do whatever you're going to do, go to your job. That could be it. But I think you work from a different posture when you do understand that concept that you said, like, what is mine is mine. There is nothing that I can do that will, either take it from me or give it to me quicker. So I do think there are things that we can do that can disrupt the process. I don't want to discount that. But I just think the emphasis is very much too much. If your heart is postured right, if you're doing your best and every time you may come back and self-assess, and maybe I could have pushed a little bit harder. Because I'll say this, I think about it in terms of exercising, right? You can work out for 24 hours in one day. You will not see not damn muscle.
Mm-mm. Or you can work out for a year and not see the same results as the person next to you. Because, okay, then that sort of goes back to the same dynamics. That's a great way to look at it, Cameo, because you and I could work out a year doing the exact same things, showing up the exact same time, but our bodies were not created the same. I don't know your underlying health conditions, or you don't know mine. And so therefore there are reasons why we have to move differently and to get the results that we may need. It's the same thing in our businesses. We could have the same business and it's still what works for you may not work for my business, even if we're doing the same things. And I think that is also when we touch into like social media, and when we go to social media looking for, okay, what is this personal speaker to give us some guidance? And I'm a little skeptical about motivation versus being inspired, because first of all, you need to inspire yourself, because nobody else can give you that grit or that grind that you need. I don't care how many motivational videos you watch. At the end of the day, in that moment, you feel good. But after you finish, you're like, now I don't know what to do, right? Because that's all it was for, to give you just a little spark. And now you're still confused and, not sure what you want to do.
Yeah. And I think it's important when you say that too, because again, I like the making things as tangible as possible. So I was talking about exercise and you talked about different body types, and I'm thinking about eating and what are your goals? Like you and I can have different goals when it comes to working out, right? And I say that because I do know consistency is what makes exercising work, right? Consistency in eating, consistency in working out. But there are so many times where I'm sitting and I do not feel like it. I do not feel like working out. I do not feel like running. I don't feel like walking. I just want to sit there. But I have to ask myself, what do you want? Like, I feel like I be talking to myself, what do you want, Cameo? I'm like, I want to look really good in the bikini. I don't want to get up and work out, And so, but I think that's the difference between like motivation and working hard. Like, do you have a clear-cut goal? And again, I want to encourage you guys, if you are listening, if you are watching, if you are joining us, we love feedback, right? Typically on a podcast, we record it and then we air it and people comment on it. But I think it's different. And it also challenges us when you're commenting live, or you say, I have this question, or can you think about that? So I want to encourage you all to ask questions and leave comments. And also, if you're just joining us, again, feel free to share. If you're new to the Good Girl Podcast, if you could do me a favor, follow us on Instagram, like our page on the Good Girl Podcast. I know it's a couple folks in the room in Grand Rapids. So if you're doing that right now, just pull your phone out real quick, boom, and find us.
And we see you.
Yes. I'm gonna come to your table. I'll make a proposition. Did you follow us? Okay, well then maybe I'll buy that. Right? No. But also I think what's most important is to subscribe to the podcast, right? So every time we release a podcast, you will get a notification to your phone, and boom, right there, you can listen to our podcast. So be sure you do that. And I also want to shout out, I think I heard a couple of our sorors was in there. So hey, sorors.
To the women of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
And also, again, to our sisters in arms that are part of the Pan-Hellenic Council. If you're in there too, we all do great work. And I think we are all essential to the progress of our community, to the progress of where this country is going and where this world is going. So again, a love to all of you all. And so the last one we want to talk about is the imaginary finish line. And that's something, yes. And that's something that I ain't got the answers. Like, I just know that it is a concept, and we have to address it and understand it. So let me define it real quick, Tanesha, before before you respond. You look like you're ready. And so it's this idea that, I'll say it like this because this is how I always say it. Once I get here, then I'll do X. That here is an imaginary line because it's always going to move. And I'm not saying you're never going to get there, but it's going to change it to something else, right? Once I get, 10,000 followers, then I'll do X, right? Once I hire somebody, then I'll take my vacation, right? Once I have a well-oiled machine, then I'll relax on Saturday. Like, that is a lie. You have to create what you desire, or you will never begin. Because the thing about it, as you grow, as you expand, more responsibilities, more expectations, more things to do. This is what I'm learning. And you literally have to shut it down and say, you are worth, right, taking a break on Saturday. You are worth getting up and getting something to eat when you're hungry, right? You are worth you don't need the 10,000 followers to do whatever you want to do. And so I think we really need to attempt to dismantle this idea of, when I do X, right, then or when X happens, then I'll do Y. Go ahead.
No, because just adding to what you're already saying, I think the issue becomes, when we do that, we have not accounted for what may be going on at that time in our lives, or what additions we have to our life at that time. So if we say, when I have 10,000 followers, I will do X, Y, Z. Okay. But when you have 10,000 followers, you may have already received another calling to now create another business or to do something else. So you're placing a time frame on something that you don't know what your life will look like at that time. Because I'm pretty sure I did not imagine that, okay, I am going to go to law school at this time. I also did not foresee I would be getting married with 3 children at that time, because nobody in their right mind would have put all 3 of those together. So I think when you're talking about that imaginary line, is that we always have greater in store. And so and I'm throwing this out there because I'm pretty sure there are a lot of men listening right now. And it reminds me of the concept of how we say, when if you hear a man that says, I'm waiting to propose or marry this woman when my finances are in order. I just wanted to kind of put that out there in the atmosphere, because it's the same concept. Like, we are lying, because either you know or you don't know. Bottom line, we know when we're ready to do something. We know when God has already equipped us, first of all. So you define a time if it's something that you're supposed to be doing, you are equipped to do it. And so to say, or to wait to, when this happens, I'll do X, Y, Z. You don't know. You cannot actually say that for yourself, and then you're lying and putting added stress and added pressure upon yourself that's really unnecessary.
Yeah, and what I hear, Tanesha, so clearly, there's almost and don't take this as an insult, not to you, but if you're listening and you're receiving this, but there's almost an arrogance when we say, when X happens, then I'll do Y, because there's an assumption that what tomorrow will. How many of us, me included, everybody included, knew what COVID was going to do? Right. That was supposed to be my year to travel. Right. But if I would have just traveled the year before, because I was going to wait until, right, Cameo learned her lesson, because I couldn't do what I wanted to do.
And we're not promised tomorrow. Not promised tomorrow. And that's I mean, in the South, they always are talking about, they always say, you can't take your money to your grave. Like, so you're going to hold on to everything, waiting for that moment. And tomorrow is not promised. This next second is not promised to us. And it is so important for us to the world that we live in is a beautiful place, and we've been blessed to have what we have, and we don't challenge ourselves enough to live in the moment. And I think we live in a world where we want things, we are immediate, where we want things immediately, but we don't allow ourselves to live in the present. And when I talk about living in the present, I remember having this conversation with someone, and being present doesn't mean you're present.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And so I think that concept ties in. It's just that finish line is just live.
Yeah. And what helped me, because I think especially like the generation that's come up behind us, and even, our current generation, social media makes us believe that, success is immediate and it happens overnight. With the planning and our next goal and what I have to do next, and really not staying in the moment. And but what I learned, and that brings on anxiety, that brings on stress, that you will literally forget a huge portion of your life because you're so caught up in I was reading a book, and I'll get to my point. I was reading a book. I can't even remember what it was about, but I remember a woman, because she was so caught up in the next and accomplishing the next and what's next and the bigger and the best thing. And again, it points back to even what we were, the imaginary finish line. Like, once I get married, once I have kids, once I become a all these things. But she was in the book. She was in, she had just delivered, I think, her second or her third child, just had a baby. And she was already thinking about like the room, because she had the baby earlier than expected. Like, we got to get the room together. And her husband had to tell her do you realize you have a child in your arms? Like, a healthy baby boy in your arms. And the story went on, and she started to think about like, wow, I couldn't even enjoy the fact that I just gave birth. And I know women who've given birth, and they talk about that feeling for some of them that comes off of someone be like, the baby ain't done. Go back in. But some of them had this almost euphoric feeling, and it's because she was so caught up in what was next. Yeah. And we miss the moment.
Even with our jobs, we have our to-do list, and it's very similar to having a to-do list, right? We're like, okay, I check this box off, I check this box off. But in you checking out boxes, was it just in a routine, or do you even recall? It's just like when we drive home. Sometimes we drive home and we don't even know how we got there. Mm-hmm. Because our minds are so far away from being present. And I know that I have done that. My mind has been so consumed that I have been driving, and I have no idea how I got from point A and finally made it home, because I don't even remember the trip. I just know I got there. Thank God. And
you're talking about short-term memory, right? So again, going back to this book, she, had some time to reflect, and she said she couldn't remember chunks of her life.
Oh yeah.
Because she was so caught up. I mean, if you 30 and you look back and you can't remember, I mean, I know we're getting older, but because you're so caught up in the next, you can't, you don't have experiences that bring you back to certain moments because you're so caught up in the next. Like, what was life really worth living if you can't remember the joys?
And that's what every part of our life, even whether it's business, we have children, we have a husband, we have to be able to be present in all of that. Mm-hmm. Because you don't want to look back and have any regrets of saying I didn't have, and it's not so much about whether I had the opportunity to do something. It's just being and I'm talking about being present even with emotions. That finish line includes all of that. Being present with every emotion that you are allowed to feel in life. And as people, sometimes we forget, we don't even know how to feel anymore because we're so caught up on that finish line. And then when you get to the finish line, you realize, because I'm sure for most of us young girls, I think we've talked about that, Cameo, is we had this idea, we want to be married by 25. We want to have our first child by 27. We want to have the house with the white picket fence by 30. All these different things. And then we got, I remember being 25 and was like, no, I don't want that right now. Mm-hmm. That's not what I wanted at 25. That's not what I wanted at 27. And so okay, now that you reached that finish line, what are you doing? What are you going to do with it? And you realize, yeah, and who I was when I initially made that promise to myself, that who I was at that point may probably is not who I am when I reached that mark of 10,000. I have grown as a person. I am new. I have developed. So again, you may not want what so making that promise to yourself, I'm going to do this when I get, you're not, probably not going to be the same person.
Yeah. And I also want to add too, I think that we don't realize whatever we are called to do, like you said, we are equipped. I think that's a hard concept or a hard pill to swallow, that you really do have what it takes. Everything you need, absolutely, you have it in the moment. You may have to, go outside the box a little bit. You will be stretched a little bit, extending your networks. But I promise you, if you are called to it, God will provide you, what you need for this season. And I don't think we realize whatever we're called to, when we put off, that probably is laying the foundation for what is next. But because we don't want to do it, because we're waiting, or because and honestly, I think some of that is fear, is we prolong, that step, or we miss that step because we're waiting. Well, as soon as I get X, it's like, no, but you're supposed to do it now. Right. Like, I promise you, or you're supposed to enjoy life now. When it comes to this. And so I just think that being present, and I love this comment by Dr. Gaines, mm-hmm, we must remember the joys of our lives. This must be intentional. And so that's a couple things I want to leave us with about how do we be intentional about being present? Like, how do I stop myself? And I've learned a couple things, but how do I stop myself from my mind wandering, right? And it's a couple things that help me first get me in the mindset. One, but very practically think, like, you will literally never again in life have this moment. Yes. Never again, however old you are, like if you are 16, 21, 35, you will never be 16 again. In 2022, on April 23rd, you will never. So get everything you can at this moment. You will never be 35 again, right? And who knows? And so I tend to go to extremes, right? And so I'm just like, who knows what's going to happen? Like, you could, God forbid, something happens to your body, right? And so you're unable to do some things physically. You will never have that opportunity. Like, it's some people who knows where I'm going to be next year in terms of family, right? People can just go. You will never have these opportunities again, like the joy or the fullness that you have because you have friends around you, right? So that's one of my approaches in terms of trying to stay in the moment and bring myself back. I don't know. Mm-hmm.
I just want to add one thing, and when Dr. Gaines, and I think this is something that people really, really have to pay attention to. When she stated the word joy, and I'm referencing that because people live life seeking happiness and not joy. Happiness is so temporary. Like, we go to McDonald's, right? We get happy. I don't know about y'all, but eating, I just get happy. So
I'm hungry.
Eating just makes me happy. But that's a temporary fix, right? But that joy is that is eternal. And so when you think about the joys of life and the blessings that we have upon us, and like when she said the joys of our lives, like that, you can understand. And then when you can appreciate joys and versus like, I'm just out here seeking to be happy, I'm seeking to be happy, you will absolutely get everything that's going to make you happy. And then you realize that you're still not fulfilled, whether that's in your business, your personal life. It will only bring you something that's temporary, that is almost like it scratched that, itch that you had, to just have a moment. But knowing the joys of life, that is something that you can continue to carry on and really rest in.
Yeah. I think that is great. So I hope, as you're listening, I hope that we encouraged you. I hope that we empowered you. I hope you felt this, right? Anytime anyone listens to my podcast, my goal is a couple of things. One, that you feel seen, like, wow, like Cameo saw me, right? Cameo and her guest saw me, right? And then 2 is that you feel it, like I felt that thing, like I want you, and if you didn't feel it, you felt something from me, right? You get a little bit more of my personality or something, but overall that you're healed. All right. So that was the live podcast from this past weekend in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The Business Expo by the National Professional Men's Network, as well as the National Professional Women's Network. Really enjoyed myself. Some great people, great businesses out there. Next week, we will resume our conversations around confessions. And this is just a reminder, if you have a confession, submit that confession. We're also taking confessions anonymously. And please remember, confessions free you, they heal you, they help you become the best version of yourself. Confessions is where healing begins. If you cannot be honest with yourself, I promise you, you will get nowhere in life. Thank you so much for listening to the Good Girl Podcast.